All right, we'll go ahead and call this to order, even though I'm still having civic clerk issues and I can't log in fully. It's giving me problems. So, as y'all see, the mayor is not here and I am standing in his place. Yay. All right. Sorry, I'm still trying to get into the system here, folks.
You know, the other day, it happened to everybody the other day. I was talking to a family member who works in the hospital, and you couldn't believe the number of things they could not do because their computer system was all messed up. So we're so dependent on having the IT stuff.
I think it finally, yep, it finally worked. Okay. All right, we are going, we are moving. So we'll start off with review of the agenda. The agenda's been reviewed. All right, governing proclamation. So July is Parks and Recreation Month, and we have staff members from the Parks and Rec Department, and I'll ask Ms. Tracy Ivy to come forward first.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tracy. Could you give us a little background about Parks and Recreation Month?
I certainly can. The National Recreation and Park Association is what we call NRPA, is our governing body. We are members of the Georgia Recreation and Park Association. And it's an annual, July Parks and Recreation Month is an annual initiative of the NRPA. Since 1985, people in the United States have celebrated Parks and Recreation Month in July to promote building strong, healthy, and robust communities through the power of parks and recreation, and to thousands of part-time and seasonal workers and volunteers that maintain our country's local, state, and community parks. The department hosts different activities throughout the month of July, highlighting and educating the public on what we do have to offer here in the city of Villa Rica.
Very good. And what are some of the events that you're planning on hosting this July?
Well, actually, you know, we opened up the month of July with our Independence Day celebration on July 3rd. So we felt like we had to include that because that's like our #1 event for the whole year where people get together and celebrate. We have a summer concert downtown in downtown Villa Rica on Saturday, July 9th. Midnight Star is a huge band coming to town. Janet and I were talking earlier about the crowd that we think we're going to garner from them being in the community. We have a Paint in the Park activity on Thursday, July 14th. We have a Senior Outdoor Fun and Fitness Day on Wednesday, July 20th, where we recognize our seniors and their strengths and passion for the outdoors and for each other and making friendships. We have a scavenger hunt in the park Thursday, July 21st, and then we'll end the season with a back-to-school movie night on July 30th. And we also have some library activities and other things dotted along the way for the whole month of July.
Very good. Thank you. And so, Tracy, you have your staff members with you, and I think we're going to present the proclamation.
Absolutely.
Do you want me to come down there, or do you all want to come up here?
We'll come up.
Okay.
Are you going to read that?
Oh, yes. See, I got to get used to this. Proclamation. Whereas Parks and Recreation programs are integral part of communities throughout this country, including the city of Villa Rica. Whereas our Parks and Recreation programs are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and a region. Whereas Park and Recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. Whereas Parks and Recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. Whereas Parks and Recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. Whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat, habitat for wildlife. Whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. Whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, whereas the City of Villa Rica recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, now therefore be it resolved that July 2022 be designated as Park and Recreation Month in the City of Villa Rica.
Staff, you guys come up. Thank you guys so much for allowing us to do what we do every day. We've got members here from our library department, our senior services section, and our athletic department, our athletic grounds department, administration, and we're just very delighted, and I want to thank you all personally for the job you do every day.
You all group today. I can get it from this way, but we need to. Yeah, act like you like each other. Yes. Yes, come on, Michael, we'll help you. Okay. Yes, I got it. Let me take a few. Good, got it.
Thank you all for coming. All right, next I'm going to move to Section B on our agenda. First item being Villa Rica Mission Alliance presentation, Amy Adams, Lifegate Church, and homelessness discussion. Is Ms. Adams here?
Good morning. Thank you
Good morning.
guys so much for having us. This is Whit Martin. He's from Villa Rica First United Methodist.
I'm going to raise your mic up a little bit. There you
Nobody
go.
has ever asked me to be louder, man. This is impressive.
It's for the folks watching at home.
Hello, everyone at home. Thank you guys so much for having us. Whit is a member of the board of the Alliance, as well as we have representatives from Villa Rica First Baptist as a part of the Alliance, and we're really excited. So the Mission Alliance is a brand new organization launching June 16th. We've been working on this for about a year now in communication with the city and a lot of other churches and organizations within the city, with the goal of helping to curb the cycle of homelessness within Villa Rica. And we've come at it from a couple of different ways, and the main thing our job is to do is to help introduce people to the idea that there is another way to live, and that we can come alongside and help resource them so that they can get to a place that before felt unreachable. So we're going to start that with a food pantry of sorts. I know Villa Rica has a lot of amazing, awesome food pantries, and we are super excited as the Alliance to help support those. This one is specific to homeless needs. So each Thursday, homeless people can come to the Alliance and they can receive a bag of goods that are very specific to homeless needs. So that's things like crackers and peanut butter, things that don't require preparation. Seasonally, we'll have different items available as well, such as socks, hygiene kits will always be available, blankets, those kinds of things that will help provide with some of the basic necessities for our homeless population here. And then the ultimate goal isn't just to hand things out. We are very interested in empowering versus enabling. We want a city that has an answer to the homeless problem, not just a place where it's really nice to be a homeless person. And so one of the biggest issues that our city faces right now is our businesses are being inundated is not really the right word, but there are a lot of people requesting to stand at a business and to ask for assistance. You see them when you go to Publix or McDonald's or Ingles, that there's not really a place for these people to go other than to call the police department. And the police department does the very best that they can, but they're not set up to handle the greater issue of homelessness. So in partnership with the police department, what the Alliance will be able to do is give our local businesses a compassionate way to say no, and a funnel with which we can send people through that will actually give them help, real help that can help them break that cycle. So it's a multi-phase program. Phase 1 is the food and resource pantry. We've partnered also with Tanner Healthcare, a couple of local mental health facilities that will help us to resource people. One of the biggest issues in the homeless community is mental health, so this will help us. We don't have to be the experts in it because we're surrounded by them. We have incredible mental health experts right here in our own community. So we're just a link to them, but what we're looking to do is engender some trust. If we can get the homeless community to trust us, then we can help them take that next step. So that phase 1 is really just about getting them to trust us. We're going to provide you with things. We're going to meet you where you're at. Then the goal is to move into phase 2, which would include the pantry, community benevolence. Obviously, we are a faith-based organization, so prayer is huge for us. We're going to offer that for every person. Phase 2 is where we begin to really see the cycle breaking begin to happen, and that will be, we'll go to mobile operations. So instead of people coming to where we are, we can go to where they are. Provide some life skill classes such as resume writing, GED preparation, money management, basic job skills, basic life skills, and then life help operations. So these are things like mobile showers, mobile washing machines, mobile haircuts, and then we have some partners already who will help us on the clothing side of things. But I want you to think about if you were a homeless person who wanted to break the cycle, you really don't have a lot of options to do that. Because to get a job, you have to be able to write your name. You have to be able to hand in a resume. You have to be able to sit through an interview. And you need to present yourself in a clean, put-together way, which is very difficult to do when you're living in a tent by Ingles. So what our hope is that we can come alongside you, give you those things, help prepare you for that, and then begin to help you take the steps towards that. Then phase 3 would be all of the above, in addition to some long-term mentoring programs where we could get people in circles of community with other mentors who will help them know, how do I keep this cycle from repeating? What kind of life skills do I need to develop? Somebody who will walk alongside of them, and also some job placement programs and some housing assistance. Those are the long-term plans. Where we're starting is at that phase 1, where we're just building some trust. We're going to go to our local businesses as well, and we have little business cards that we can give to them that it'll say if they have a homeless person that's panhandling or asking for assistance in their area, they can actually hand that card to them. It'll have our address on it, our contact information, and they can tell them, hey, we don't do that here, but here's what our city does do. Here's a place you can go to get help. And so that's where phase 1 is. Our launch date is June 16th. We have a location right now. We're over at, it's called the Chapel at Lifegate Church. It's the really old white building by the train tracks over there on Connors Road. So we're going to be able to meet in there. We'll do that once a week. And yeah, that's kind of the goal. Our goal is to really help Villa Rica be a place where homelessness can be ended in a compassionate way and in a way that helps people live more than they thought that they could. Anything else?
Just in short, using the opportunity that churches have in the community to build relationships is a wonderful way for us to leverage relationship building with those who are in need. The police department gets called in order to help, and there's going to be sort of a natural resistance at times, or there's going to be a block or an obstacle. The Mission Alliance wants to alleviate the struggle that the city, the police department, and even other community partners have. And if churches can play that role, a compassionate role of building those relationships, we feel like we can help shift culture within our own city, and even within the churches that are serving. We want to shift culture towards what it means to build relationships. And eventually, this is the hope, right? This is the dream. is that folks move from homelessness to begin to become they get to become helpful citizens in wonderful and life-giving ways, especially for them. And I think that's what we would like to see. And so one day we hope to stand before you and have testimonies of folks who have said, the compassion of our city, not the Alliance, we're just a bridge, the compassion of our city led to me having a life here in the city that I now call home.
Yeah. Okay. So any questions?
One question.
Yeah.
What is the level of homelessness in Villa Rica?
Well, comparatively, it's not crazy high, which is good for us, but we do have, I believe is it 4 or 5 now? Like communities. Yeah. There's at least 4 full-time homeless communities. The thing with homelessness is it's a multi-tiered issue. So you have the truly homeless who have no place to live. So they're living on the streets. They're sleeping outside at night. A lot of these are the ones you see. There's for our city, a substantial size homeless community near the Walmart. And then you have our home insecure. So it's not that they don't have a place to stay, they just don't have a place that's their own. So they are sleeping on couches, sleeping in their cars. One day to the next could be different. That's the larger of our homeless community, is that middle range of home insecure.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mayor Pro Tem? My question is, how many of y'all out here in the audience are part of this group that this is your thing? Because I know we have extra people today. Is it just
It's just
y'all?
us two.
Okay, all right. I was just curious because I didn't know if more members of the churches came. I'm really glad this is on our agenda. I had asked for it last month before I knew you all were coming because our homelessness has grown here. And I'm not an expert on this, but I am a critical thinker. And I do read and research a lot of things. And so I want to thank whoever's involved with doing this. It is not, while we need to partner with y'all, based on everything I've researched, government is not the answer to this, and neither is just putting people in jail. And the cities like, they get started in New York, and it might be as far back as the Bush administration when they decided and thought it was a good idea to do housing first. So instead of addressing the needs of the homeless, they're basically saying, we'll get these people off the street and we'll stick them in a building and it'll solve our problem. They'll be out of sight. And all they had then was the mental health, the drug use, the death, all the things that go with that's happening in homeless camps was inside, but it was still happening. And so Christopher Rufo did a documentary. I sent one to the city manager and deputy city manager on homelessness. It's a very short documentary. I would like to network with y'all. Now, I have this much time to devote to this topic, but I do know some great resources. Everywhere from San Antonio, where when you check into a motel or hotel room, you're told if anybody comes up to you asking for something, you know exactly where to refer them because they have resources already set up for those people, so they're not panhandling on the street. What's happening in San Francisco, LA, and the government solutions made the problem worse. So you know when you're, but on top of that, when I was down in, can you tell I care about what you're doing?
Yeah.
When I was down in Austin, Texas, right, they made camping legal on the street and everything. And so I was down there for a conference that actually was covering the topic while we were living in a city where it was going on, where you couldn't walk, you had to almost get off the sidewalk to walk around the encampments. It was intimidating to even walk into certain stores because of the people wanting something from you at the door. My husband was stalked there. I was in meetings all the time. He had time to explore. So there's like the homeless person following him around, mental health issue, whatever. And even at our own exit here, we had a woman where a homeless man, because you think of it as sometimes being harmless people, but there's quite a bit of violence associated with it, not just amongst themselves, but it happened at exit 26, probably a couple years ago here in Villa Rica, with a man reaching in. I can't remember if he had a knife or whatever with the one. Chief, you'd probably remember it better than I would, although you have to remember a bunch of cases. So if y'all will call me, let's network a little bit, because some of the government solutions that have been disastrous, at the same time, down in Austin, there's Graham Allen, who has done almost like a little community to help these people. They are showing the successful things that have worked in cities, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right?
Yeah.
We can look at what's been done that was disastrous and what's been done where they've really decreased the homeless population, gotten people into jobs, and they're actually contributing to the place they live and all.
Yeah.
So thank you for being here. I really appreciate. I did not know what was going on behind the scenes. I knew there was something, but I haven't been updated regularly. So y'all have been working on this for a year.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
We will definitely reach out. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Any questions on this side?
Okay, I just had a couple questions. Sure. First off, how do y'all know this approach will work?
Well, we've studied in some other places,
Okay.
like actually some of the research that she mentioned. And the issue is if you go straight at the need. So, for instance, let's provide homes. You're not addressing the cause. So the biggest obstacle we're going to have to overcome is the trust factor. Will they trust us? So this first phase is really just about trust. If we can get the people who live here homelessly to trust us, then some of those people will trust us to help them take that next step.
Okay, so what do you think of like the phases? Like, what is the goal to be at phase 3 or the last phase?
Tomorrow in my heart.
But realistically.
Realistically, we've put about a 24 to 36 month timeline
Okay.
to fully be in phase 3. It could go faster. Statistically, probably not.
And how are y'all getting funding?
It's through, we have church partners,
Okay.
private citizens. It's a nonprofit, so we are fundraising.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
That's all.
And then after about 12 months in operation, we can begin to apply for some grants as well.
Okay. And do y'all have like a volunteer program or anything
We
like that?
do, yes.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, can I speak
Yes.
in reference to this? So this was brought to us, city manager came to us and said, we need to fix the homeless issue. And as Ms. McPherson said, it's not a police issue, it's not a government issue. So Hunter spearheaded this along with Amy and got the group. We had a meeting where we had people come that were interested in helping, and this is what came out of it. And I know how Amy works, and Amy's a go-getter, so I'm excited to have her on board because, you know, that's what you got to have. You got to have people that's really dedicated to it, that really doesn't mind working. And so I think it's going to be a great thing. We're involved. Hunter's still on the board with them, but we're definitely not in the forefront because building that trust, you don't need an officer walking up. You need, other people working with them. So we're definitely helping, but this is their their route. So we appreciate them.
Thank you, Chief. All right, very good. Thank you. Next, we have a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for fiscal year 20. And Ms. Hallman will present and tell us about that information.
Good morning. This is an award that I believe Villa Rica has been trying to gather data in our financial statements to have a comprehensive financial report. I came in while they were at the 1 yard line and helped bring them over. I know Sarah and staff had been working on this for a couple of years because it takes a lot of time to gather the data in the statistical section of the financial reports. You have to go back 10 10 years of history on different demographics, statisticals, on financials, and all that. So it takes a lot of time to prepare. Therefore, for fiscal year 2020, we submitted the report to the Government Finance Officers Association, which is the National Association for Government Finance. And that was our first time in submitting for the award, and due to COVID, like everything else, there was a delay in getting the award and a delay in getting the plaque that I have over here, but we actually got it, and so I wanted to make the presentation and thank the council for their support, the city manager and deputy city manager, the department heads, and last but not least is the finance team. We have a great finance department. It takes all of us working together, doing our jobs and doing it well in order to make the last thing of the financials, which is kind of like a summary of everything that happened during the year. So I'd like to thank them as well. So I'll just read the news release from GFOA that they sent out. It says the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada has awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting to the City of Villa Rica for its annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year ended September 30th, 2020. The report has been judged by an impartial panel to meet the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate its financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read this report. The Certificate of Achievement is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by government and its management. And here is the plaque. So when we apply for it every year, we'll get a medallion when we get it. So.
Jennifer, is this our first time to
Yes.
acquire this?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay.
So, you want to get a photo? Okay. Lisa wants to get a photo. Stop laughing, Chief. Come on, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. All right, so one thing I guess it's not on the agenda, I guess it probably should have been in the ceremonial presentations, but we have some high school seniors from Villa Rica High School here. And so I'm going to ask our Public Information Officer, Ken Denny, to please come up and give us a little information about those seniors and the program. I realized my mic wasn't on.
Mayor Pro Tem and members of council, we have, as you have indicated, some guests in our room today. We have Ms. Megan Day, who is a history teacher at Villa Rica High School. And she has brought along 9 of her students, 9 Villa Rica students who are interested in local government, and they are here today to observe it in action. We have with us Bryson Osby, Addison Baird, Jeremiah Green, Tristan Lockhart, Rosa Lopez, Cade Robinson, Deasia Shinard, Callie Smith, and Jasmina Walker.
All right.
So I hope that they will all get a proper education today in how their local government works. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, so we'll move on to item 3B, election of GMA's district officers. And council, you should have in your packet a proposed list of officers from the GMA's nominating committee. Any discussion on this?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Well,
If everybody's
This
looking.
is the work
I was
session.
just going to put it
Oh,
on.
that's right.
Yeah, if no discussion,
vote
I was
now.
going to just go ahead and ask if we have any objection to put on the
We
consent
can't
agenda.
vote till 6 o'clock.
Consent item one, yeah. No
Okay,
objection.
so we'll make this consent item 1.
Great.
All right. Tom, you had any input on that? No? Okay. All right, so next we're going to move to Section C, Community Development Department. And item 1 there is the application for Uncorked on Main LLC to offer retail sales of packaged beer and wine on the premises of 129 Main Street, Villa Rica, Georgia, in a public hearing. The public hearing will be this evening at 6 o'clock. I am going to ask Ms. Nairi Simpson to come and give us a little preview about what this application is all about.
Actually, there was a correction.
Okay.
It's not packaged beer and wine. That was a misusage of words. But I will go ahead and present the item to you.
Okay.
Uncorked on Main LLC, which is a business here which currently holds 2 licenses, the occupational tax and a current alcohol permit as a farm winery, as opposed to packaged sales of beer and wine. They're looking for to add to their license consumption on premises beer, wine, and liquor.
Okay.
And that also the state of Georgia, included in the package, has approved that request and issued a license February 23rd, 2022. So we're just needing for our local license also to be approved to allow them the consumption on premises beer, wine, and liquor.
All right. Council, any questions about the clarification Ms. Simpson has informed us of?
Well, I sure appreciate the clarification because I was confused.
Yes.
Because remember the whole alcohol ordinance with package sales?
Mhm.
So this will be basically pouring these additional items there, not the package sales, and that's what
No.
differentiates them from what we just changed in the alcohol ordinance.
Exactly. It's actually to offer it while in the restaurant. The state license at the top lists license to sell alcoholic beverages. But when I spoke with our representative, she clarified and indicated it was consumption on premises, which is also listed on the state license here.
Okay, I'm still confused. I'm sorry. What is their current license?
Farm winery.
And that means they can't sell on premises. They can't pack. What exactly does that mean?
Farm winery is pretty much where like they are producing wine and able to sell it there. This consumption on premises will also assist them with like catering, being able to offer cater event services, and such as where last month we were here for the special use permit to offer their services at the festival. Now with their regular license having this distinction, we won't have to have a special permit each time.
Okay, thank you.
Now, originally when we okayed what's happening at Uncorked, and this might require David Mecklin, they received their license under what was called like boutique wine. I'll probably need David's help in a second. So they have different hours from, say, what a bar would have. And so I'm wondering, how will this change their operations? And I know we don't allow bars downtown because, and based on the audit, they have to sell a certain amount of food. That's what differentiates them from a bar. But Uncorked was under a very specific type of license. And so how does this change that, David, now that they're not just going to be the craft beer and the farm winery?
I think that is an issue we're going to have to look at because they are operating under a special designation as craft beer boutique, which does not require them to meet the food sales requirement. With the approval of this license, they will have to meet the requirement that 50% of their sales have to be food. And I don't know if anybody's thought through that or not, but that's true.
Are they aware of that? Do we know if they're aware of that?
I'm not aware. I mean, they have the I
know
haven't
they have the
discussed it
restaurant.
with them, but they have
Okay.
the ordinance information.
Okay.
Okay. Well, they'll be here this evening, and so we'll have a public hearing on this anyway.
Okay.
So we'll address it with them at that time.
Alrighty.
Any other questions there? Okay. So we'll go on to item 2.
Okay.
Thank you, Nairi. Supplemental regulations for liquor stores, package stores, and liquor outlets, an amendment to section 13.01. And this will be Ron Johnson, and this will also have a public hearing. So if you can give us a synopsis of the agenda item, please, Ron.
Sure. Good morning, Mayor Pro Temp and City Council members. This ordinance addition would be for our supplementary regulation section of the zoning ordinance. We found it prudent to establish certain regulations for the new liquor stores and liquor outlets, package stores that was recently approved by the City Council. So as a part of that, we needed to install a section of our zoning ordinance that would actually govern and regulate that use. So as a part of that, we're looking to establish a 1 acre minimum property size within the C1 and the C2 zones for this particular use, along with a 200-foot roadway frontage on a state highway or major arterial, and minimum of 6,000 square foot building size for the use, amongst other regulations.
Ron, just off the top of my head, and refresh my memory, do we have, because I think I've looked at this before, do we have the major arterial defined in the ordinance or somewhere else in the city to where we're clear what that is?
Yes, it is defined within the zoning ordinance, and also there's a map of these routes and roads within the zoning ordinance as well.
Okay, very good. Council, any questions for Ron?
One question, Ron. I went back and looked at last month's meeting, and this identical thing showed up in the last month's meeting, and we were required to cover it several meetings. So why is it repeated?
Yes, there was a noticing snafu, so we tried to clear that out of the way, so we couldn't actually hear this item at that time. So we're bringing it forward now.
Okay, so we tabled it last month.
Yes, I believe it was tabled. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Ron, just real quick. What okay, so we just did this package sales. What instigated, how did we find out, oh, we're missing something, we need to do this? The 1 acre.
It made it to me actually through David Mecklin. I was copied on a couple different responses between Chris and him regarding this type of ordinance, and I picked up with it at that point and kind of moved forward with it, being that it was to move in tandem with the alcohol licensing ordinance update. So we didn't want to just get caught out there in a situation where we didn't have any regulations or standards at all. And we had an ordinance that was passed that would apply basically to all property.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Thank
I think
you.
just to add on to that, most of this you've already adopted in the alcohol ordinance, but I think we decided that it would also be important to incorporate it in the zoning ordinance also. And to incorporate it in the zoning ordinance, you do have to go through a notice procedure and have a public hearing to adopt it. So you're really just re-adopting what you've already adopted in the liquor ordinance.
Except that it's in the zoning.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you.
So this is the second application, second presentation of this, and is that all that's required? Because this showed up in last month's meeting.
Yeah, it was in last month's meeting, but it hadn't been properly noticed, so
okay.
we had to redo. This is a redo of last month.
Okay.
But David, we did adopt it last month, pursuant to the alcohol ordinance portion of
Yes,
it, not the zoning
ordinance,
portion.
you adopted it already, but we are now adopting it, incorporating it into the zoning ordinance also.
Okay. Any further questions, council members? Okay. So there's a public hearing, so we will see you this evening, Ron. All right, your next item, amendment to section 9.03, multifamily and single-family attached design standards. Again, if you can give us a synopsis of this, because there will be a public hearing on it this evening.
Sure. So this is a long time coming now. We've had quite a number of variance applications from our townhouse and multifamily development section of our zoning ordinance, and we wanted to try to correct some of the language, but also add some additional regulations as well within this section, in addition to and in tandem with Table 4.4 residential lot standards. So as a quick synopsis, we're looking at increasing the minimum width for townhome units from 24 feet to 26 feet in width. We're clarifying some language, adding driveway depth minimums for townhomes, in addition to spelling out certain fenestrations that would need to be required, and also establishing a minimum garage width of 16 feet, requiring 2 garage doors for townhome units, and encouraging for the use of rear-facing garage door units, but not making that an actual requirement. In addition to having no more than 70% of a front-facing or street-facing garage door to take up the front facade, so no more than 70% could be garage.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Your planning commission saw this and recommended denial unanimously. Could you expound upon that, why they recommended totally denial?
It didn't get corrected. Yeah, it was actually approval. It was an anonymous approval. So we corrected that in the packet between Friday and Monday, I believe it was.
Are you saying this denial that's showing up on my screen is wrong?
Nope, it's approval.
Well, yes.
It's still,
That's
it's,
wrong.
It is wrong, though, yes.
okay, this civic clerk thing is wrong, okay.
Yeah.
All
Sorry
right,
about
Ron,
that.
where does it address? I see the changes for the townhome width. I don't see the where it addresses the rear entry or encourages the rear entry. I don't see that provision.
It should be the very last page in the very last section in bold, subsection 8G. Townhome developments are encouraged to have rear-facing garage doors whenever possible. Street-facing garage doors can constitute more than 70% of the front facade of the ground floor living area. So they can for rear-facing, but
What page would that be in the zoning ordinance?
page of the ordinance. I know it's section 9.03. I don't have a page number with me.
Okay, because the snippet that's showing here is just section 7, actually. No, wait. Yeah, I think the snippet that's in the packet is not the full revised version. It's just some of it. Maybe
Yeah,
I'm looking
that's
at it.
one. And then that's
See, that's not what I was looking at.
yep. Yeah, that should be it.
Okay, I see that now. Okay, I was looking at the next link. Okay. It's the second. It's the second PDF. And it clarifies public versus private
Yes.
city road. Okay. All right. Any further questions for Ron, council?
Yes.
Leslie, go ahead. Councilwoman McPherson, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so I know on P and Z it was 5-0, so that was good, because when I first thought it was denial, I was going to call at least several of them and find out what the thinking was. Okay, so I get the 12 to 16 foot on the garage is so that it'll be a 2-car garage.
Yes, ma'am.
Less
Mhm.
cars out front, on the street, that sort of thing. What made us decide to go from 24 to 26 feet? I knew we had done some denials for 20 and 22, because our current is 24. That's what I have over in my ward village walk. So what was the thinking behind that?
Sure. So, in order to establish 2-car garages as a minimum, the minimum width of a townhome unit would have to also increase. So I did some back math, that's actually how we came up with the 70% figure, because if it's a 26-foot wide unit, in order to establish a 16-foot garage minimum, it came out to 16 feet, which is the minimum that you can get for a 2-car garage door, a double garage door.
Okay, very good. Any other questions?
I have one question. I know the rear-facing garage is something that gets brought to council all the time and is a lot of variances. Is this not just gonna create more variances where they're gonna go, where now instead of having the rear facing garage door, we're gonna have, oh, they want a 24-foot instead of a 26?
That is very much possible, that we could end up still continuing to get these minimum widths. But I think that it's important that we stick to our standards that we would have, and even if we're going to be increasing those standards, like in this particular case, we want to definitely have the best type of product that we can out there. So we kind of took a fresh look at this, instead of just kind of just correcting some sections. We just really wanted to take a look at it and see how can we get the best product out there.
And so right now, there's no minimum on garage doors. They could do one with one garage door. If they,
That's correct.
Under the current zoning ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
All right. And Ron, since this is only in the zoning ordinance, if we have already approved a zoning and they would be grandfathered in underneath the zoning
Existing
ordinance that
code.
was at the existing, right? So
Yep.
this is only for future developments, is
That's
that correct?
right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. No further questions on this, council? Okay. Next is another public hearing. Ron, new ordinance to establish regulations for 5G wireless antennas. So again, just a quick synopsis, please.
Yes. The 5G wireless antennas are popping up everywhere, so we're looking to just have regulations for them. So we did take this through the Planning Commission. It was approval 5-0. But what you saw in your packets was basically a kind of like the model ordinance from the state. We just kind of tweaked that for our local needs here, and submitted them for adoption tonight.
Okay. Council, any questions?
Yeah. Did we kind of model after some of the things that the Georgia Municipal Association has recommended?
Yep.
And some of this has to do with aesthetics.
Yes.
So
yeah.
they don't come in and put like a giant 5G box in the middle of the historic downtown. So there's some regulations about where it can be, the size and that sort of thing, right?
That's right. Maximum heights and things of that nature. Mm-hmm.
It did come from the GMA recommended ordinances.
Okay. I knew that had been things they had worked on, and I knew it affected legislation at the state level, because they were telling us because the cities were trying to keep control over this to a degree.
Sure.
So it's their standard proposed ordinance.
Okay.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay. All right. And then next we have a variance application VA 0622 Take 5 oil change sign variance and public hearing. So again, Ron, if you can kind of, I see that staff recommended denial, but if you want to give us a synopsis of what the application is and the reasoning for the denial.
Yes, this is a variance application for 4 additional signs on the Take 5 oil change building that was recently constructed within the last several months. The wall signs, they vary in size. There's already a pylon sign that's there that we approved. There's also a front-facing wall sign facing Highway 61. And some directional signs that are on site, and they're looking to increase the amount of signage, one on the front, one on either side of the building, and then the rear as well. So we're recommending denial for that.
Okay, and what's the just quick reasoning for denial? Just
we
brief.
think that the variances are self-imposed, and that there's already a adequate amount of signage there currently.
Okay. Any questions by council?
Had they already requested this at the last time when we approved it? Is this an additional request?
I don't believe they did request this. There was a variance application at some point that was filed in the past, but it was not related to signage though.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the new one out by AT&T?
It is, yes.
I will say one of our vehicles has been through that oil change at this point. They were quite professional. Do they have any signs currently that violate the ordinance?
Yes, they do. They have several banner signs that were not approved by the department.
So is that being taken care of at an administrative level?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right.
Ron, I recall the variances application, and they withdrew that, but that was for when they were across the street, though. That wasn't for this property. Is that correct?
That's right, where it was proposed to go next to the Chick-fil-A.
Okay, but that they haven't applied for any variances for this property, though.
They have not.
Where they're at now.
No.
Okay. Any other questions, council? Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Then we have another variance request, VA 0722, variance request from table 7.6, section 7.032. 8 and the public hearing, 27 and public hearing.
This variance request is from RBE Holdings LLC for a new headquarters building for Wayfield's Foods. They're looking to reduce the 600-foot required distance from a right-of-way or intersection to the driveway for the site, being that this is located on a stretch of Highway 78. Our ordinance does have a chart in there that does require 600 feet on arterial roads. So the property width is less than 600 feet, so that is not feasible or possible to do on this site. So there would, in order for this site to be used for commercial purposes on an arterial road, it would have to be reduced at some point. So the applicant is actually looking to reduce from 600 down to 242 feet, and that's to Florence Circle.
Okay. And so what's Wayfield Foods, you said it was the headquarters, so this is going to be an office?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what's the present zoning?
It's currently zoned C1.
C1, okay. And so did the distance, is that a requirement of the zoning ordinance, or is that a requirement of the zoning category, or just a general requirement of the ordinance?
It's a general requirement of the ordinance under the development standards section of the ordinance. So we have a chart in there that requires 600 feet for arterial roads for commercial purposes. That drops down to, I believe, 200 or 300 feet if it's a residential property. And it's just for distances from a public intersection or some form of an intersection to a driveway to a site. So there's an adequate site distance, but that may be excessive for this particular application.
Is there a distinction between, when we say commercial, is there a distinction between office use and retail or restaurant use?
There's not.
Okay. And it's because it sounds to me that the requirement in the ordinance kind of foresees a restaurant and retail use, not necessarily a office use like this. Would that be fair?
I think the ordinance is just trying to cut down on crossing highways, major highways, and I think that it's particularly for Highway 61, which also falls within the same regulation. I think it's kind of thinking more along the lines of a major highway like that, and where it would be crossing over and trying to minimize the number of driveways to major intersections, which that route has several of them.
Okay.
So, Highway 78 is also kind of thrown into the mix there, but it's a very different type of highway than 61.
Okay. Council, any questions?
Is this the property that's adjacent to the new east-west trucking facility?
It is, yes. Mm-hmm. No.
Council, any questions on this side? No.
If it's not right next to it, it's very, very close to it.
Okay. No, I think basically in a nutshell, it's impossible based on the size of the property to comply with the ordinance.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Yeah, it's a non-issue to me.
Okay. All right. Ron, I would say on this, for the agenda item, it doesn't say who the applicant is. Like, for example, on the Take 5 Oil, it says who the applicant is. This doesn't say that. So if we could just...
Are you saying like on the actual agenda itself?
Yeah, well, on the agenda,
Or on the
it
cover
says,
sheet.
for example, it says VA 06-22 Take 5 oil change, right? On this one, it just says VA 07-22 variance request from table. It doesn't say Wayfield Foods variance request.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Sure.
Okay.
You want it in the subject line. I got you.
Right, just so that we can kind of quick glance so a person can know that this is, because it almost reads like we're amending an ordinance, not this is being requested by an applicant. Okay, and I think that's,
But I point out, if you read his page, his lead sheet, RBE Holding LLC is requesting this variance.
sure, but I'm saying if a member of the public is just reading the agenda sheet, they don't realize that this is someone's applying for this variance. It's not obvious from just that snippet there.
No worries, I'll correct that for tonight.
Thank you, sir. All right, so next item in community development, police department and courthouse generator project, and this is Nick.
Good morning. All right, this item I believe everyone is aware of, and we've all been anxious to get going. Staff has put out a RFQ to local vendors. We published it on the website, and we issued that on March 3rd. We had a mandatory pre-bid meeting on April 8th where we had our engineer that drew the plans and the specifications for this installation. He was on site and present, and we all had a formal meeting to discuss how we'd like these proposals to come in and what we are looking for as a city. So staff received 3 different proposals to install the generator from 3 different companies. All 3 are fairly local. Staff received 1 low bid from Her Industrial that did not meet the specifications and the requests that the city made, or city staff made on behalf of the city. In their proposal, they had some exclusions that we requested them not to exclude, and then also they included some of their scope that wasn't quite right. It didn't match the RFQ that we put out or the drawings. Staff reached out to this company and asked for clarification via email on April 12th, I believe, and we did not hear a response from them. So city staff has disqualified that proposal. The next lowest bidder came in at $85,500. That would be Coopson's LLC. Coopson's has done quite a bit of work for the city and knows our police department and our courthouse very well. City staff is recommending the city manager engage with Coopson's LLC to install the Yancey 175 kilowatt generator that would supply the courthouse and the police department in the entirety with power.
Okay. Council, any questions for Nick?
Is there a lot of wiring involved? I mean, $85,500 seems like a lot just to install a generator.
The main feeder, just to go from the automatic transfer switch to the generator itself, is around 2,000 feet of copper, and that material alone will probably come out to be about $20,000 just for the feeder. That doesn't include the control switches or the control circuits or anything else.
Okay.
Nick, this was a budgeted item, but what was the amount in the budget for it?
The amount in the, and I could be mistaken, but I believe it was $175,000. That's
Okay.
for the generator and also the labor to install.
Okay, and this is just for the labor?
This is for the labor and material to install the generator that's already been purchased by
Okay.
the city. And the generator should be on site either this Friday or the following Monday.
How much
did the generator cost?
Around $90,000.
So is this overall over budget then by a hair?
I would have to reference the original capital budget since it got transferred last year. I don't want to speak incorrectly.
Jennifer will check on that for us. Council, any other questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, Councilwoman
Nick,
Ferguson.
for our guest, when the city issues an RFQ, what is an RFQ?
A request for quote.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I'll elaborate.
I knew we had people here.
We do.
Sometimes I forget what those.
I get to rambling and I just kind of go on, try to get it all out there. Short and sweet.
Any other questions on this side, Council? My quick math said that's $175,500. And Nick, you said the budgeted total budget for this was how much?
I believe $175,000, but again, I don't want to be on record and say incorrectly. Yes,
Sure.
Too late it is. I try not to speak in absolutes up here.
I know what that's like. I'm a lawyer.
It's on video, so if you're wrong.
That's right. That's right. This is a time-sensitive project, just to clarify, because we are currently renting a generator from Yancey, and every month we have that we're paying money out of pocket.
We're waiting on Jennifer and her computer.
It sounds like it's awful close to the budget, and plus if you take into account the out-of-pocket we're paying for the temporary generator.
Do you want, I mean, is there any objection to put this on consent, or do you want to bring it?
Really close.
So we'll need a budget amendment then for this. Okay. Any objection on putting it on consent?
None whatsoever.
Okay. That will
Thank
be
you.
C2. Thank you, Nick. All right, Economic Development, Janet Chumley, Manager. And her first item, 2022 Main Street Advisory Board appointment. Janet, if you could give us...
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. We have an open position on our Main Street Advisory Board. We have 7 total on the board. We're 1 short. The Main Street Advisory Board, as of 3/4/22, our board member Stephanie Warmoth withdrew, resigned her position on the board as we presented it through our downtown Villa Rica and our social media sites to fill the position. We had 1 applicant apply. We did have 1 to express interest, but they never actually applied. The city clerk's office received an application from Melissa Hill on 3/17/22. Melissa and her husband own Plaza Home Care in downtown Villa Rica. The Main Street Advisory Board voted in April and unanimously chose Melissa Hill to replace the vacated position of Stephanie Warmoth. Ms. Warmoth was currently serving a 3-year term, which Ms. Hill would serve the remainder of the term, 5/10/22, until 12/31/23.
Okay. Council,
Melissa is here if you have questions.
Okay. Council, any questions for Janet or Melissa?
I have a request. Is there a way that we can be notified when there's an opening? And the only reason, I know we do advertising this way, but to be honest, I never see those. And so I'm thinking there might be some citizens that would express interest, or maybe people we know about or have said something where we can say, hey, there's an opening, you might want to put in an application. So if there's a way when somebody resigns, somehow we can just get some little thing that says, we have an opening on Main Street. And then if we have someone in mind, we can, at least mention it to them. That's all.
We can do that.
Sounds like a great candidate, though.
And Elisa, we have access to the boards and appointments, civic clerk that shows vacancies, and et cetera. Okay.
Also, when we get those applications in, I forward them on to the staff, and they are loaded on the board and commission site on civic clerk that you all can see. We also go in and whoever resigned, we took their position off, so it is available. You can see that. You can actually pull up the applicants, and you can see everyone for this year, the previous years, who applied for a board. So it is available to all of you.
And it is, that's true. The thing is, you don't know to go look for it because you don't know that there's been a resignation, so you don't even know to go look to see what the status is.
Sure. Any further questions? Okay. Any objection to making this consent item 3?
None.
All right. And Janet, you're going to tell us about item 2.
Yes, this item is actually contingent upon something that Nairi presented earlier, as we are wanting to engage Uncorked to do our remainder of our events. As you guys know, last month you approved them to do a special event permit to sell beer and wine at the amphitheater for the Jazz Festival. That was simply a simple special event permit. So now we're looking for them to do it the rest of the year. That will be contingent upon your approval of their catering license this evening after a public hearing.
I'm going to ask a question for David on this one. In the event that we cannot, for some reason, pass their consumption on premises because of the issues that it raises, could we issue them a special event permit for the next event instead of adopting item D2, David? Or is there a notice issue there with the nature of the public hearing, perhaps?
Yeah,
Or the nature?
I think the big question is, we need to be contracting with people who hold a valid license to sell beer and wine here. And if they don't have a valid license, for a pouring license, then we shouldn't be entering into a contract with them to do it on our behalf.
Okay. Council, any other questions? No. And so I think we'll probably have to hold off on making this one. We can't put this one on consent. Thank you, Janet. Oh, actually, we have one more for you, I believe. Or is that going to be Chris?
I'm going to have some help with this one. This one is for the Georgia Conservancy contract, Villa Rica Placemaking and Alleyway Activation Program.
Okay.
I'm going to have some help from Chris Montesinos. We also have representatives here from the Georgia Conservancy contract in case you guys have questions.
Okay, very good.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem and City Council. You may recall several months ago we came to the council and requested permission to apply for the Atlanta Regional Commission's Community Development Assistance Program. This was open to the city of Villa Rica, being outside of ARC and being part of Three Rivers Regional, only because we are an LCI community. The program that we have applied for, we'll go into a little greater detail later, but just to let you know that the Cdot Program, or Community Development Assistance Program, is run by ARC. It will basically, communities that are selected to participate either fall under the umbrella of ARC assistance or will be coordinated with one of their partner agencies. And in this case, the city of Villa Rica was selected for the project that we had proposed, which was the Downtown Placemaking and Alleyway Activation Program, which we initially started back in 2019, but kind of petered out because of COVID. So we wanted to officially pick this project back up, and we have been selected for a partnership with the Georgia Conservancy. I'll let Janet tell you a little bit more about this project, and of course it does actually address a couple of the implementation steps identified in our LCI study, so it's very consistent with what we're trying to accomplish.
So we are seeking the City Council's approval to enter a contract with the Georgia Conservancy for the Villa Rica Placemaking and Alleyway Activation Program for $5,500, which will be used product development funds, which is tourism funds that certainly this would qualify for, being that it's alleyway and placemaking signs.
Okay. Council, any questions, or did Nick and Lubin, would they like to say anything?
Good morning. I'll just take an opportunity to touch on Georgia Conservancy a little bit. We're a 55-year-old organization whose mission is to protect Georgia through both ecological and economic solutions for better stewardship, conservation, and sustainable use of our land. And we have a sustainable growth program. That's me and my colleague Lubin. We're representing the sustainable growth program that works with cities to consider how to grow to strengthen their communities and more sustainably in the long term. And what that usually means is focusing on places like the downtown core and also growth mitigation if that is desired by the city. We've done a few of these economic development and placemaking projects in the past, including most recently in the community of Lithia Springs in Douglas County. But we also participate in the Georgia Economic Placemaking Collaborative organized through GMA and have consulted with cities including Canton, Covington, Jackson, and then Millen, Georgia, which, if you're not familiar, is about 45 tiny town, 45 minutes south of Augusta. So we have experience, and we're looking to dig our heels in a little bit more and enhance that work in partnership with the city of Villa Rica. So your support would mean a lot. Thank you.
Okay. Council, any questions for Janet, Chris, or the representatives from Georgia Conservancy?
Yes.
Conservancy. Leslie?
Now, I have the pictures. We don't have anything up there, but I haven't heard anybody give an example of what any of this would be. I mean, there's the talk that I understand what you're talking about because I read this stuff, but give people an example of what we could do with this. What might show up downtown, or what alleyway might get activated? What do you mean activated? So just a clear example for people.
I think they have the Lithia Springs example attached.
So placemaking, I think you hit upon something really that a lot of planners think about quite often, which is placemaking is a fancy word for basically community beautification and increasing economic development activity as a result. So what we did for the community of Lithia Springs was give them some ideas about other communities and what they have done. So that could include things like wayfinding signage, community identity, branding. If you have ever been to Roswell, they have great maps showing their main street there. In Lithia Springs, one of the things they were interested in doing is they have this kind of quasi-downtown area with a clock and a historic building and some other signage that they were hoping to enhance in order to make it a more pleasurable experience to be there, in the hopes that they can support their downtown businesses. In terms of alley activation, if you scroll down a little bit further, there are a few examples that we found. You actually might have to go maybe to the 20s or something. It's a pretty extensive project. But there are a few in Noonan, Georgia that we highlighted. There was a great project in Statesboro. And there you go, there's the Statesboro example, where if just by some simple capital improvements, and they don't have to be expensive, they can be temporary, they can be volunteer supplied, they were, and a little bit of intergovernmental coordination, they were able to take what was an alley that was just for service vehicles and trash and totally transform it to be a place where they could have outdoor seating and festivals. And so this is the kind of thing that we could propose basically in the contract or in the scope of work. What we're hoping to do is target some specific sites in tandem using the inspiration of the LCI study to propose specific sites that the city could look at to have a couple of these pilot projects that would then build momentum into creating a more vibrant downtown district. And we plan to hold some community engagement activities around this as well. We hope to engage a steering committee of downtown property owners and business leaders, but then also engage in a community forum with community members. So I hope I've answered your question, but I'm happy to clarify.
You
anything.
did, but the combination of what you said and this, they say a picture speaks 1,000 words. Yeah. What we just saw there are real life examples, and I appreciate that you said that everything doesn't have to be expensive, and then it can have volunteers in the community that can help do these sort of things, whether it's artwork, cleanup, planting rocks, and I've wanted to do this for years, but we're getting there, right, Chris? The LCI and Ron has worked on this as well, so it'll be real nice to actually see it happen, even if it's one thing. So I appreciate that. It looks like we're getting closer, so I feel more positive because COVID didn't help anything move along.
Certainly not.
Yeah.
Okay, this is more of a design type contract where you make suggestions as to what goes where. This doesn't really create any of these things that we're seeing on the pictures.
Correct. So this is what we will end up with is a report that we're probably going to title something around Placemaking Alley Activation Program Implementation Plan. So we will have visual renderings and sketches of examples that Villa Rica could follow if they wanted to. And coupled with that, we will have implementation action steps and potential funding sources that the city could pursue in order to get there. We would not be installing any of these. This is the visioning document to lay out the program.
Okay.
but we'll now actually have better access to some funding sources. That's my understanding, because I said this is about the last committee thing I'm going to be on until I see one of it happen, you know. We can only do so many reports, but it does appear that what we're doing is leading to that actual activation. And I'm telling you, we could do stuff with volunteers. There's people that love this community that are willing to give their time if they believe it'll be used wisely and that they'll get results.
Okay. Council, any questions on this side? And I understand, Council, that Mr. Mecklin has already reviewed this proposal for legal reasons and has no objection to it?
I do not. I have looked at it and it's fine.
Okay. And so do we have any objection to making this consent item 4?
None.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, next is Parks and Rec, Tracy Ivy.
Hello.
Good seeing you again.
You too.
Long time no see.
You doing good?
Yes, ma'am.
None of us has fallen off our chairs so far.
All right, and so the first item here, mobile covered stage for the July 3rd fireworks show. And I understand all 3 of these items relate to the fireworks show. So I guess if you want, Tracy, you can just tell us one time and we can go from there.
Yes, these all do relate to the July 3rd Independence Day event that we'll hold at the Civic Center on July 3rd. The first is the mobile covered stage. We're asking for you to allow us to secure the vendor for that for the amount of $3,650. Do you want me to just go through all 3 of them?
You can if that's
do
if
them
you
individually.
feel like that's easier, or we can go.
Okay.
Does council have any preference? Okay.
These
go
are
for it.
budgeted, all budgeted items. The second item is the sound and lighting vendor. We did RFPs for all of these, and we only had the 1 respondent, so that amount would be $9,471. And then the final is our bands, the entertainment that we'll provide. That there'll be 2 bands that will perform for a total of 4 hours between the 2, and that amount is $10,500. They will have a Jimmy Buffett, Eagles flavor, so I think a lot of folks in the community will respond to that and enjoy their time there. So we're asking for the approval for securing these vendors for those 3 items.
Okay. Council, any specific questions about any of those 3 items?
Yeah, how did we go about choosing 2 bands?
We went to RSC, who is providing the lighting and the stage. That's one company that's providing all that, and this is what they do. They have a list of all the bands that are available. We've sort of excluded the bands that we have used in the past and wanted to go with some new flavor, so that's how we secured these 2. We listened to their demo tapes and feel like they're good for our community and for this event.
Is this an even split? It's one number, 10,500, and they divide that between the 2 of them?
It's divided among them. It might not be an even split, but it's divided between both bands.
It says Glow Band $4,500, A1A $6,000.
Yeah.
And David, I understand again you've reviewed these proposals, contracts, and you have no legal objections.
I have none, and they are very similar to the ones we've used over the last 10 or more years.
Okay. And council, any further questions?
Yeah, Danny asked one of my questions.
Okay.
So that's good. Only 1 bid, just,
Yes, and the first time we bid, we had no respondents, so we had to rebid it. So it's, yeah.
okay, and our sound and light, isn't that who's doing our other concerts
Mhm.
too? Am I remembering that name right?
Yes, ma'am, they do a lot for
Okay,
Janet.
so we're familiar with them and everything else. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so, any objection to making item E1 consent item 5?
None.
Okay. Any objection to making item E2 consent item 6?
None.
Any objection to making item E3 consent item 7?
None.
Very good, thank you. Next, section F, Pete Zabranis.
I'm sorry, do we not have, Okay, we already did the Parks and Recreation Month. The end of summer bash, did that get removed from the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I guess I do my homework too early in my agendas.
And you're not Pete, you're Eric, I assume?
That is correct.
Good to meet you, Eric.
Good to meet you. Good morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
So this is a budgeted item. This actually comes out of capital budget for, this is from we set the whole system up for replacing the SCADA at the lift stations and the wastewater plants. This is for the next set of 6 lift stations to replace the SCADA out there and get it upgraded. The reason we're doing sets like this is the delivery and the labor has been crazy out there like everybody else is experiencing. So that's the main reason we're doing sets at this point. I move we engage with Zout Technology to replace and
Eric.
upgrade 6 lift stations.
You recommend you don't move, just by the way.
Sorry,
It's
recommend.
okay.
For a total of $46,232.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah,
Any questions for Eric, though?
Yeah, this is the second set of 6, is that what you said?
Yeah, so yep, exactly. Last
Huh?
time it was 6 and it's an additional 6 stations.
How many more sets do we have to go?
So we're planning on doing majority of them. It's a total of 32 lift stations.
32?
And it altogether is 32 lift stations.
We're doing them sets of 6.
Sets of 6, that is correct.
Okay.
And so for each batch of 6, we expect that it'll be around $46,000?
Yes.
Okay.
How much was spent on set 1?
Set 1 was 52, and the reason that was is to add level readings to the stations with the SCADA. These ones that are going to already have that capability, so we do not need to add that to the
Okay,
stations.
thank you.
Okay. And we have a history, relationship, background with John Zile?
That
I
is correct.
understand?
He's integrated everything throughout the whole system.
Okay. So it makes sense for us to stay with him and versus another vendor.
Absolutely. He's very responsive and very knowledgeable of the whole system out there.
Okay. Any other questions, council? Any questions on this side? Okay. Any objection to making this consent item 8?
None.
Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, I think we have one more for you, though. Or maybe that's Pete. Okay, Pete's got that one. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. The next item is a request for engineering services for Carter and Sloop to conduct a bathymetric survey of Lake Paradise and a water yield study for all 3 lakes, Lake Cowan, Lake Paradise, and Lake Vashon. As you might be aware, city staff, the city manager, our consultants and engineers had a joint meeting March 23rd with EPD to talk about any possibilities for us to increase our raw water capability. And by that I mean more quantity, more water to be able to treat, and hopefully increase our withdrawal permit. So what came out of that meeting are requirements that EPD would like to see, which would be these yield studies on all the lakes. And since we haven't done a bathymetric survey on Lake Paradise, we need to include that as well. And this was not a budgeted item. And we had, for professional services, I had $11,000 left in that line item. So you can see with this request for $48,650, we were short in that.
Okay. And so, Jennifer, I guess we'll do a budget amendment for that forthcoming. Oh, it's included this afternoon. Okay. Council, any other questions for Pete?
Yes. A comment first.
Yes.
This sounds like a really boring item, and it may be the most important item on the agenda. I mean, as I could look back through it. We can recreate ourselves, we can entertain ourselves, but we have a real problem when you don't have water at home. And so, and some of us have been here long enough to remember what happened during the drought. Right, and then it was extremely costly. We had to buy a lot more water from Carroll County and everything else. So will this information that we get, and I don't care that it's not budgeted, because this is so important, right? We need to fund this, because ultimately we'll save money if we can get more of our own water and become a little closer to water independent, maybe not slowly. Will any of this, that didn't make sense, not slowly get to water independence, even if we don't get all the way there? Will this give us any information as to maybe future dredging, not just what we can get right? Okay, tell me.
Yes, ma'am. By being able to determine the total volume of all three lakes, and also the impacts on those lakes throughout the course of the year and over the years, like you said, to include drought, it would determine what the effective yield that we can expect from that. So when they do the bathymetric survey of Lake Paradise, they'll actually generate a geometric, volumetric, if you will, analysis of that and say, okay, how much has filled in? Because if you'll remember, our impoundments, our earthen dams and RCS impoundments that were built in the late 50s, early 60s that were for flood control, soil erosion and that sort of thing. So they have silted in over time. We need to determine how much is silted in, what parts of the lakes have silted in, how many cubic feet of fill we would have to remove to regain depth, and that sort of thing. Or do we go vertically and increase the height of the dam to get that depth? So all of these elements are important to determine to see where we go from there, what the potential is and what we're capable of doing.
Okay, I'm glad we're having those discussions. And don't take me wrong about the recreation, the entertainment. That's all quality of life recreation, kids playing ball. So it's important. Okay, it's important. But this stuff people cannot do on their own. They can't take care of the water and sewer, and they can't build the roads. It's only us that can do those items. So, okay, thank you. I appreciate the additional information on the dredging because I was wondering about that.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further questions from council?
Yeah, I'm assuming the amount is 48,465 and not the 4650 that's showing up on my screen here. That's a typo, huh?
I've got 48,650. Let me take a look at the
48,465. There's an extra zero thrown in here.
Oh, down in the, oh, I see. Yeah, down in the staff.
Oh, that's a typo. Sorry. The amount was 48,650. So that was a mistake.
David, technically, since that's in the motion, can we put this on consent, or do we have to have a fresh motion?
Wait a minute. You said 650. I see 465. 48,465. Is that 4 out of place or what? Which number's out of place?
The 4 is out of place. That 4 should not be there.
It has that second 4 that should be.
Yeah, it was a typo. The
48,650. Okay.
Yes.
I think the answer to your question is that it can be on the consent so long as y'all all know what you're voting on.
Okay. So, council, we're all aware that we're voting to authorize $48,650.
Yes.
Okay. So no objection to putting this as consent 9? Okay. All right. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
Ms. Hallman. Section G, Finance.
Wait on the train.
It's up to you. If you want to compete with the train, go for it. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
The first item I have before you is to ask for approval of the supplemental cyber liability insurance through Crum and Forster. Per Megan Murray, who works with the company that goes and gets the bids for us through GERMA, she said the cyber liability market is very challenging for all industry sectors, but particularly the public entity. We're seeing significant rate increases and restricted coverage terms with certain controls are not in place. Fortunately, we, being the city, were able to renew terms, and the terms we're being offered are more favorable since we have controls in place. Please note that the ransomware has been sublimited to $850,000 with a 15% co-insurance provision, and the deductible has also increased to $15,000. So the quoted price is $15,067, and this is in addition to what is already covered in our general plan. This is excess coverage that, after speaking with Jim, our IT director, he recommends that we take this as well. We had this plan or this policy last year as well.
And so just for clarification for council, I discussed this yesterday with staff. This is excess supplemental. It's not excess supplemental cyber liability, but it is the cyber liability is excess supplemental to our general liability. The phrasing of the agenda item is kind of awkward. Any questions for Jennifer? Any objection to making this consent 10?
No.
Okay. All right. Next, we have the budget amendments for numbers 187 through 292.
Okay. As you know, last Wednesday, I believe, I gave you a packet in regards to the budget amendments that I'm bringing before you today. We went over them in some detail at the Finance Committee. And if you want me to, do you want me to go ahead and go department by department?
Well, let me just say this. Are we, council, I personally am not inclined to put this on consent, so I can have her go through and talk about it now, or we can talk about it again this evening, or if you have questions now.
Yeah, I have a few questions, but instead of doing it twice,
Okay.
I'd be more than glad to hold those, and let's just do it once in the general meeting. And I agree, thank you for doing that. I think when you're making this many changes for transparency's sake, it would be good to do it in the general meeting.
Okay. So unless you guys have questions now, we'll just talk about it this evening. Okay? Well, Jennifer, we'll go ahead and move on to your item number 3.
Okay. Okay, item number 3, I believe, is to approve the new 5-year agreement with GFL. In April 2019, the city began its 3-year contract with GFL as the exclusive provider for curbside residential garbage pickup. The current rate that we pay GFL is $12.66 per cart per month. In December 2021, the city issued a 90-day notice of intent to cancel the contract, with an addendum issued in March to extend until a new contract is awarded. An RFP was issued on February the 10th with a due date of March 25th, and 2 firms responded to the RFP with the following terms. We had Waste Pro of Georgia respond, and GFL. We asked them in the RFP to provide a 2-year, 3-year, and 5-year agreement or contract. And as you can see, GFL is the lowest on all 3 years. And so we met with the city manager and the deputy city manager, as well as the mayor, discussed this at Finance Committee as well yesterday, and I'm recommending that y'all approve a new 5-year agreement with GFL. Also, the contract has been reviewed by legal, and they're fine with the contract, if approved.
Okay. And David, I did notice that you included a provision. I assume that was you that included the provision that's subject to the 1-year rule for underneath OCGA.
Yes.
Okay.
We're required to have that in there. I mean, I think it's okay to have a 5-year contract, but you have to have an out if for some reason the council chooses not to budget money for it that year, and that clause covers that.
Okay. And staff, my understanding is that we're recommending the 5-year contract because that does give us the lower rate per cart.
That is correct.
But that is still subject to the CPI increase that comes annually.
Correct.
Council, any questions?
Yeah, I don't know who wants to answer this because Okay, so we're going in the 5-year contract. We do have an out, because I thought about that, because we've had a number of complaints. We've talked about doing garbage even in-house. Y'all have discussed that. And some of the complaints are probably very legitimate complaints from customers. Other times, it's just been crazy with staffing, and I try to explain that to citizens. Almost everywhere you go, everybody's, not everywhere, but for me, a vast majority, they don't have enough people. And so they're closing certain hours, they're working less hours. So I don't know how that's going to work out with them going forward. At least we got 2 bids. We only had one, and it was them last year, right?
Correct.
So what's the thinking going forward with this? I guess if they did a really sorry job, we have the out. Some of the things they can't control because of staffing. So any input on that, on what y'all have been thinking about at the staff level?
Bobby has done some homework on what it would cost us to get in the business, and the consensus at this point is that we don't want to go there. 2-year lead time on trucks, for instance, big capital expense. We'd have to buy carts, and then we just put ourselves in the same position of, can we hire and keep people, especially drivers? Can we get truck parts and keep them on the road? That's one of the GFL's issues now. Jesse says they typically have, at any given point in time, 2 trucks in the shop. They have 8 in the shop now pretty regularly. Can't get them repaired. You know, do we want to go do that? You know,
Right.
we're not recommending it. And we'll see. We'll do the 5-year because it's, that locks us in longer, and we'll look at it every year. They are having serious service issues. There's no question.
Okay, so.
But we don't,
Yeah.
I mean, our options are.
I was skeptical about us taking it on. I mean, Sandy Springs was the poster child for privatizing a lot of government things, and I knew how it worked out the initial years, but I'm really not updated on how that all played out. I think they went ahead and started eventually taking some things more in-house, but I was skeptical about us doing this. But that'll also help me explain it to citizens better. I mean, I have a wrecked truck in Florida that's been there since the end of February, and I'm hoping to get it back this month. So when I can tell them that's not just staffing, but I wasn't thinking about the trucks, when you can't get parts. So, and they have been pretty good about eventually showing up, sometime only a day later, leave it out there. And I tell them they're having to work sometimes 7 days a week. So I hope that will help citizens understand, that they're, as far as I know, they're doing what they can. Now, I've had some mess ups out there that weren't explained by that, but okay, thank you. That helps me understand it and explain it.
Any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just to comment, I think they are trying to do a better job, because we had a garbage can stolen out on Edge Road, and the next day they brought another one back, so they're trying.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. And so, council, any objection to making this item C11?
None.
Okay. All right, Jennifer?
Okay. The next item goes really along with the approval of the new GFL contract, of course, is updating the customer rates. And so the first cart would go from $14.95 is what we're currently charging. It would go up $1.09 to $16.04. The second cart, we're currently charging $12.66. We're passing just the cost along to the customer. The proposal from GFL is actually a decrease of $8.50. And then the low-income senior, that's just always been a 25% discount off the first cart rate. So their rate would go from $11.21, an increase of 82 cents, to $12.03.
Council, any questions? No. Any objection to C12?
None.
Okay. And Jennifer, financial update?
Yes, I'll be doing that,
This
if you don't
evening?
mind, this
Okay.
morning.
Oh, this
I have
morning.
a-
Okay. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
I have a my daughter has a chorus concert this evening, so I asked Sarah if I could go ahead and do it this morning.
Okay.
This is the financial update as of March 2022. Our cash, you can see it, we're doing well. We're at 30 million, with 11 million being the general fund. Water and sewer having 7.6 million. Sanitation, solid waste at 195,000, and then we have our 2015 Carroll Splost at 1.3, our 2016 Douglas Splost at 2.6, and our new 2021 Carroll Splost at 5.3 million. Our growth, we've had 34 building permits year to date at 63,000, 40 water taps at 60,000, and 40 sewer taps at 160,000. Local option sales tax still continues to trend very well. You can see for Carroll County for the month of March, we received this year 159,000 compared to 131,000 same time period last year, which is around a 21% increase. Douglas County still experienced the same, have 137,000 in March of this year compared to 113 last year, which is a 21.3% increase. Our hotel motel tax is performing well year after year. October through December, we've received just under 41,000 when compared to the same time period last year. That was a 63% increase. And then the second quarter, our second quarter of the fiscal year, we've received 97,000 compared to 65,000 last year, which is a 48% increase. Our business activity, water and sewer, you can see that our revenues are at almost 10.6. Again, there's always going to be this disclaimer there. The reason that it is so much more than it was the prior year is because of the close to $6 million in ARPA funds. Remember, the ARPA funds came in, we accepted them in the general fund, and then we transferred them out, and it's considered quote-unquote revenue or a transfer into the water and sewer fund. It's a one-time revenue source, but it still is a revenue source, and that is why there is a discrepancy there, but it's notated down at the bottom. Our expenses are higher than they were the same time period last year. This has been said, I think, with every update that I've done. Also with the budget amendments, that is why you see around $460,000. I know y'all will be discussing that tonight, but I can't emphasize enough that is really needed for wastewater more than anything. Their expenses, which is under sewer, is around $300,000 more than it was the same time period last year, and that's due to maintenance and repair of equipment, chemicals, lab services, and rental of equipment. So that budget is really needing the budget amendment in order to continue their operations in wastewater. Sanitation and solid waste, revenues are at $739,000. Expenses are at $622,000, and right now they have a net income of $117,000. And last but not least, our self-funded insurance fund is doing really well. You can see so far that we've had $194,000 in savings, meaning that our contributions into the plan minus our expenses, whether it be claims, admin fees, our savings have been around $194,000, and we have $975,000 in the bank. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Jennifer.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions, though? Nope. Okay. All right. Tom, your turn. Resolution of support rural downtown redevelopment grant, but Chris is going to talk to us about that.
Yeah, this is an opportunity I'm very excited about. You recall last month we submitted the federal RAISE grant for the Villa Rica Transportation Reunification Program. And just to recap, what that was is connecting Mirror Lake to downtown, as well as some internal network improvements, including Ruby to Church or Gordon or whatever we're going to connect to, as well as the connection from Anderson Road up to Old Stone Road, integration of new bike and PTV trails, personal transportation vehicles, on either side, making the Shoreline Drive connector, which is something we've been talking about for a very long time, a reality to bridge the current 5,000 or so population over there in Mirror Lake and Douglas County and bring them into the downtown Villa Rica community with a more direct route. It does improve on efficiency with respect to public service delivery, emergency responses for police and fire and EMTs, especially when you've got the situation where the railroads are blocked. It provides alternate access to various points of public interest. This opportunity, in piggybacking off last month's grant, last month the grant really was for the Shoreline connector from Shoreline Drive to Cleghorn Street. It also included the upgrades to Anderson and Cleghorn Streets, but did not include the segment that we're including in this application. What I'm most excited about was the opportunity when I was talking to DCA a couple of months ago, telling them about our raise application, and they said, oh, well, we just found out that we've got $17 million in the budget we didn't know we had. We've got to spend it really fast. Yeah, that we're working on that. So they're looking for shovel-ready projects. I told them about this project, about the complete streets aspect, about how this was an integration project to our downtown. So the DCA's Rural Downtown Redevelopment Grant came out due June the 3rd. You've got to have your project ready to go. And because of the background work that I had done on the RAISE grant, we've got a project that's ready to go. And so I'm very comfortable that we are going to have a very competitive application. It is a significant investment on the part of the city. We've got a match that we are advancing it as at $567,925, which is a lot of money. But the grant that gets us is for $2.27 million. I mean, it's a tremendous leverage and cost savings to the taxpayers, and the long-term benefit and how that works with the work that we've got going on in the tax allocation district and with Fuqua. The Shoreline Drive connector is finally going to become a reality. It's an amazing thing. And what that does to connectivity between the folks on the 61 commercial corridor with the folks over at the Mirror Lake corridor, and how that bridges the gap and really kind of unifies the city, I think is going to just be very transformative, along with the stuff we're doing downtown, as we mentioned previously this morning, and with our LCI. I mean, downtown's going to be the place to be. So we'll definitely look forward to the support of the council. I'm working on numerous letters of support from our community partners, and looking forward to submitting a very strong application.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from council?
Yeah.
Well, let's let Anna go first. I heard her
Okay.
voice.
First of all, what is the terms of this grant? How many years or year or months?
What happens is if we are approved for the grant, that grant has to be allocated by June. So we will have money ready to go once we put our project out to bid, to go ahead and start with the design, engineering, and construction.
Okay, but how long do we have the money? Because usually don't they have terms on them?
This one in particular, it's really just an obligation deadline on their part. There's not a sunset on how long the funds are available.
Okay.
I would suspect, though, that they would like to have that money spent within 2 years, though.
Okay. My next question is what, because the packet didn't include like a budget for it, what are we going to include as the match?
We're actually over-matching the grant. There should have been a budget.
As someone who is a postal administrator, why are we doing that?
Because it's very typical in all of our federal and state programs that there's a 20% match.
Okay.
They reduced it down to 10% on this round because they were so desperate to get applicants. I
Okay.
think that in our case, though, it makes sense to show that we are committed by overmatching or leveraging our typical 20%. Puts us in a much more competitive and strong position, because this is, if we're going to ask for 2.2 or 2.3 million dollars out of 17 million on a state competitive, call for projects, we're trying to put our project in the most advantageous position for funding. There is an outline, I think, on the last page.
Okay.
That does provide a budget as far as the overall project.
Okay.
And what we're committing to is just a 20% match on the application as a whole.
Okay. And is there any reporting on this that has to be done to, this is DCA, right?
Yes.
Is there any reporting that is going to have to be done, financial or otherwise, to, so they know where their money went and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I will be serving as the city's project manager. I'll be working with our city engineer, and as far as any reporting requirements, it's not as arduous as a federal grant, but I'm sure there will be some accounting.
Okay.
Typically in these cases, they don't just give you $2.3 million. You basically have to spend the money and then go to them for reimbursement based on what their obligation is.
Right, I understand, they're allocating, we're going to bill them, so they're not providing the funds up front.
That's right.
Like a fixed price, this
That's
is going to
right.
be a reimbursable
Correct.
project.
Correct.
So there will be billing in.
Yes.
Okay, and, okay, I think I'm going to get too far into the weeds, so I will stop right there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Carter?
When would we have to come up with the $568,000?
Well, we don't have to come up with it unless we're actually selected for funding.
So it won't be the next budget cycle?
That's right. I mean, basically, they're basically gonna obligate the funding in June. As far as when we kick off, that's gonna be in the next fiscal year. So we'll have time to budget in the next fiscal 23 budget cycle for this match.
Okay, so all we're doing is making a commitment that we want to do it.
That's correct.
Any other questions from council?
Yeah, so they're going to pick in June, they're going to make their decisions, who's getting it, or they're, okay, so that'll be decided in June.
Correct.
This is a big deal too, if this were to happen. And to get that road that even, I mean, we always talk about shoreline, but if we get that additional road, or we put it in one way or another, going from Anderson over to Old Town, remember when we did the traffic study and they were saying the whole thing about moving traffic is having options, right? Other than your main arteries to get people east, west, north, south, and all that, and over. That would involve getting people over by the hospital and everything else. So this is my question for you. Are you the one who put together this wonderful report?
The application? Yes.
This 47 pages I went through?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. It took time, but it's impressive, Chris.
Thank you.
And I just really appreciate it. And, you know, I know some of our employees, they do things we don't always get to see or hear about it. Y'all are in a garage doing something great, or out in the recreation department. And so we don't always know that we should say thank you for some other things. But I'm telling you, this is impressive. I feel like I'm not going to get excited till it's in hand. It's just better to live that way. You know, the bird in the hand, just wait. Don't get all worked up and then get your hopes dashed. So I am going to withhold my excitement at this time. But this report, it's impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I believe it increases our chances.
Yeah, I think that we definitely have put our best foot forward on this effort. And also, Janet and I met with the two ladies that run this program last week and talked about our application. Actually took them to lunch, showed them the downtown, showed them where the road would connect to really have more of a personal connection, and they're actually very excited about it.
Very good.
Personal relationship. Personal relationship really helps.
And they're also over
Yeah.
at the GICH program, so
Okay.
got some
Good.
extra credit there.
And not to put a damper on it, but money does not grow on trees. So just know, if we get this money, I'm guessing, okay, DCA, but are they getting it federally? Is it federal and then DCA is the disbursement, or is this, it's all that money that they sent to the states that then the states can then allocate out in grants to us? Is that the way it's working?
I did not really get that sense in this particular circumstance. It was really more like money that they did not expect they were going to have in the budget that all of a sudden materialized, and so they had to obligate it super quick.
Yeah, that's
think
why
that-
I was thinking maybe it was part additional stuff with the ARPA funds or infrastructure. So we're all paying for, what I'm saying is, we're all really paying for this in a way.
Oh yeah,
But since it's there, Villa Rica's putting our hat in.
someone's
Yeah.
got to get it.
Yep.
Council, any objection to making this consent 13?
I have a comment.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Is it okay if I speak for you for a second to Councilwoman McPherson's question about the federal?
Sure.
Leslie, if it's federal flow through, they'll have way more reporting requirements than they did. And since I didn't know what the requirements were on reporting, but I get that because
Yeah.
there's a lot more paperwork and everything else, and
it would have been referenced in the application.
just like road work, we have to look for the Indiana bat and the snail and everything else because they require all those extra environmental
Yeah,
things.
one more comment on that regard. The title of the grant, the Rural Downtown Redevelopment Grant, the first thing I asked DCA was, are we classified as rural? I mean, we're certainly in a quote-unquote rural county, but we're actually part of the urbanized Metro Atlanta. And then, what was their, if they had stipulations on, income qualified communities, et cetera. And they said, basically, we're just trying to get the money out. Rural doesn't matter. Downtown doesn't matter. It's just, we just stuck that name on it. And so, but I think the fact that they're super excited about our project, I think really puts us in a good position. So.
Okay, and so this is consent item 13. All right, thank you, Chris.
Is that up so people can see it on our website? Okay, thank you.
All right, ratification of agreement for Twin Oaks 2 punch list work through RDJE Inc. Is that a Bobby or a Tom? Okay.
So we're trying to clean up a mess. Back in the day, before the recession, we constructed the first phase of Twin Oaks. The second phase saw infrastructure but not house building. So when the current owner came back around to Bobby and was ready to start on the second phase, all the systems that were installed back 15 years ago had to be inspected. But one of the pieces of that was never completed was the lift station. So the way, none of y'all probably remember this, but the way that Twin Oaks was built was there was a temporary lift station constructed to temporarily service phase 1. And then there was a second lift station, which was the bigger permanent lift station that was to be completed to handle 1 and 2, and then the temporary would be decommissioned. Well, for whatever reason, the builder just could never satisfy anybody on our side with the second permanent lift station. And we met and we argued and we talked and they tried and we inspected and we denied and on and on and on, went on for months. And so finally we went to the builder and said, how about if the city hire somebody to go complete this lift station to our satisfaction, and then you pay us. And he's agreed. So that's what this is. And we've already done part of this in another contract, so the paving part around the lift station has already been taken care of in another contract similar to this that we'll be reimbursed for. To make it more complicated, there is another development adjacent to this that needs to physically connect to this lift station. And I have also asked that development to connect their water system to this water system. So the idea is that we're trying to avoid developments where we don't loop the water lines. And we've done that historically everywhere. So we have dead ends of water lines. Take Maple Valley, right near Mr. Carter, right? Water line runs into the neighborhood and it just stops, right? It doesn't loop into anything east of there or north of there or south of there. Well, to do that, I've got to get these property owner, builder, developer guys to work together, which is, so this is what I would like. And this has happened really even since this was written. So you see that I was asking you to ratify it. The reason was I was going to go ahead and tell them to start this work, and then I changed my mind. So what I need you to do is just move to authorize. Okay, so you can't put it on consent. But I'd like for y'all to understand that I would like to use this money as leverage to get these easements in place and to loop this water, because I think that's important. So this would be authorizing up to this amount. And then I'm going to do my best to try to get these two guys to work together. So is that okay?
Any questions, council?
Yes. Sorry. Questions on almost everything today. Is it inline communities? Is that the one that will be behind Bojangles? Because I was trying to visualize it, Twin Oaks, so it'll be them. Okay, so how does this relate with the pump compared to what we're trying to do with the big basin areas and get rid of pumps? Did I use the right term, basin?
Right, this
I'm trying
one
to remember
wasn't.
what we were calling that.
Yeah, this, back in the 2000s, we just weren't thinking that way. It was all neighborhood by neighborhood.
Right, so
that's all this
this
is.
area doesn't play into doing anything like that at this point?
No.
Okay, all right.
I wish.
David, since we know we're authorizing and not ratifying, can we go ahead and put this on consent?
Yeah, I heard Tom say that, but I think you can authorize it as well as ratify it in the consent agenda.
Okay. And you reviewed this agreement already?
I have not.
Okay.
But I will take a look at it prior to the meeting, and if there's some reason that I have an objection, I'll raise that.
Okay. Any objection to making this? Well, he said he'll let us
I would go ahead
know.
and put it on there, and then if I have an objection, I'll raise it to you before you vote on the consent agenda.
Okay. And Elisa, if you could update the name of the item to authorize instead of ratify. And I guess the motion as well needs to be updated. All right, that's consent 14. All right, renewed the lease of the old library to Southeast Trans for 6 months.
All right, 2 years ago, we leased the old library to Southeast Trans for 1 year with a 1 year renewal. They exercised the renewal. They are still not finished. They would like 6 more months. The problem with just renewing the lease is that the lease did not contemplate more than a 1 year renewal. If you remember, there's no money involved in this to amount of anything on our side. We get $1 a month, but they did about $100,000 worth of improvements. So we only contemplated that swap off for 2 years, and so we need to come up with a different deal. And so what I'm suggesting is that we do offer them 6 more months, but that we ask for $1,000 a month in rental income, which I think is still generous, but I really want Southeast Trans in the community. I think they're going to be a great partner for what we're doing, so that's my recommendation.
All right, and Tom, so I don't know, have we ever formally discussed what we're going to do with that building once they moved out? Okay, it was my understanding that we're going to move city staff into that building.
Possible.
Possible, okay. Any questions for Tom?
My question is a heads up about the question I'm going to ask that's related to this when we get to the budget amendments. And I guess you'll be gone. Sarah, will you be doing the budget amendments? And it relates to what you just said. As we look at budget amendments and improving areas where we have employees working elsewhere, whether it's at the V-Plex, we got everybody spread all over the place. It's got to be really hard some days where you just wish you could walk into the office like you used to and ask somebody a question, and the V-Plex is really out there. And so I'm going to ask this question tonight, is when we're looking at amending, doing these budget amendments, and where employees are, let's not spend a lot of money somewhere else if we're going to be able to move these employees in 6 months into this library that's had $100,000 in improvements or less. That's what we're told. So that's just something I was thinking about as we've built offices, Avanti building, everything else. This is going to change in 6 months. I mean, right? I mean, the building's looking good over there, so I figured they gave themselves a generous amount of time to get in. Okay. So I'm just going to ask about that and just something for us to be thinking about.
Any other questions? No. Okay. Any objection to this item being consent 15? Okay. All right. Does Gil usually do the consent agenda item review first and then public comment, or item review first? Okay. All right. So I have consent item 1, election of GMA's District 4 officers. Consent item 2, Police Department Courthouse Generator Project. Consent item 3, 2022 Main Street Advisory Board appointment. Consent item 4, Georgia Conservancy contract with Villa Rica. Consent item 5, mobile covered stage for July 3rd fireworks show event. Consent 6, sound and lighting for July 3rd fireworks event. Consent 7, July 3rd concert Glow Band and A1A Band. Consent 8, lift station supervisory control data acquisition SCADA upgrade. Consent 9, request for engineering services identified as addendum 22 to water treatment plant improvements proposal dated March 19, 2018 by Carter and Sloop engineers for the bathymetric survey of Lake Paradise in yield study for Lake Cowan, Lake Paradise, and Lake Fashion. Consent 10, excess supplemental cyber liability insurance. Consent 11, approval of a new 5-year agreement with GFL Environmental, Inc. Consent 12, approval of the updated customer sanitation rates due to the new GFL contract. Consent 13, resolution of support rural downtown redevelopment grant program application and 20% match commitment. Consent 14, we authorize the agreement for Twin Oaks to punch list work through RDJE, Inc. And consent 15, renew the lease of the old library to Southeast Trans for 6 months. Did I miss anything, council?
That's what I've got.
All right. So I'll ask, I do have some folks from public comment, but I think those folks have left us. So I'll ask, is there anyone else here for public comment? Mr. Young. Please state your name and address, and you have 2 minutes and 59 seconds.
Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. Michael Young, 9634 Coastal Point Drive, Villa Rica. Back to the C6 VA 0722 variance request from table 7.6. I didn't hear any mention of potential impact or conflict with the Connors Road 78 circle that is going to be just west of this driveway. And I didn't hear any comments about volume for a headquarters. I was wondering whether or not, it may be premature because we don't have preliminary plats or anything like that, but was wondering whether or not they should consider doing something like the dental office did on 78, where they installed turn lanes, and whether or not being the proximity to the circle that's going to come, complicates that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? All right.